the Kimberley-based NPO spent the day feeding vulnerable peoples in that area.
Food is a basic necessity, but statistics show that 690 million people around the world live in chronic hunger, with 98% living in low and middle income countries, and 60% of them are women. NPO Meals on Wheels is playing their part in feeding the hungry. The coronavirus pandemic had a severe impact on the economy, leaving more people desperate.
COVID did not help the situation at all. We know that because of COVID, there was job losses and there was many people, even businesses closed. So the need was just worsened, if you can say that, because of COVID.
The NPO has gone all out in trying to reach many people. One of the beneficiaries is Ricardo Benjamin. He is a father of 4 with a chronic ailment. Benjamin is grateful for the goodwill.
I try with Meals on Wheels because they help me. I can't move, so the food they bring for me help me a lot.
Government has partnered with the NPO in distributing much-needed food parcels.
Confident about the fact that this should not be a day for celebrating World Hunger Day, but rather a clarion call to each and every person out there to join hands with government and extend the reach of government really to ensure food inadequacies are being addressed.
World Hunger Day is commemorated annually. All South Africans are encouraged to play their part in helping the needy. Reginald Witboy, SABC News, Kimberley.
Right, let's talk about this matter now with the CEO of Youth Development at Aleph Muhlenberg. Africa, Tikkun, operates in underdeveloped communities. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Just how bad is the situation in South Africa? I believe that globally that there are 60 million more people who go hungry since 2014.
Thank you for having me on the show tonight. And without being too alarming, I do think that the situation is dire. A lot more dire than it was before COVID. So before COVID, we already raised the issue around nutrition, not per se around hunger, because for us, nutrition is a very important component of this, if you will. So since COVID, a lot more people, as the previous caller or the previous interviewee said, a lot more people have lost their jobs, and therefore hunger has become an even more urgent matter in the communities that we serve in South Africa.
I mean, it has been said, even at the highest level of multilateral platforms such as the UN, that it's not as if the world does not produce enough food. And when you talk about the calorie intake, I believe the threshold is something like 1,800 calories per day. And the intriguing thing for me is just the inequality. There are people who actually can afford to eat more, but force themselves to eat less. But there are people who actually don't even have access to even have that amount of calorie intake on a daily basis.
100%. And I think for us, it's a symptom of a bigger problem. And the bigger problem is socioeconomic and economic inequality. And with South Africa still leading the charge, and that's not something to be proud of as a country, when it comes to economic inequality according to the Gini curve. So we need to do something about unemployment, about poverty in general, and about the unequal society we live in. And I think COVID perpetuated the situation and made it real for a lot of people who didn't necessarily have it in front of mind before, that people are hungry, and that the moment they lose an income, that's immediately their food security is on the line. So it is a bigger issue, if you will, when it comes to poverty and inequality. But the immediate symptom that we are trying to alleviate is food security. We're trying to alleviate that through a number of innovative measures that keep money in the communities that we serve, but it really is an issue at the moment.
But as you say, even when we talk about food insecurity, it's also a broader subject, because it's not only perpetuated by food production. There's the issue issue of inappropriate care practices, unsafe environments. There's also low access to quality water, sanitation, hygiene, etc. So talk us through that from our own point of view in South Africa.
100%. And I think sanitation and access to clean water are a second component to access to food, nutritious food in general. And then the ability to purchase food that actually has nutritional value that stimulates growth, both physical, emotional, and intellectual growth. Because what we see now, when that doesn't happen, a lot of children do stunt. And the stunting of children, we don't see the effects of it per se now, but we will see the effects of it down the line to the development of these children and their ability to access the job market or have brilliant entrepreneurial ideas and promotes economic growth in our community. So it is a bigger issue, and it is an issue that we can't tackle alone by giving people food. Because it needs to be linked to things like education, healthcare, and even access to jobs or access to entrepreneurial opportunities. So we can't look at it in isolation.
And sadly enough, just from an education perspective, that's why there were feeding schemes in schools. But with COVID-19 and the shutting down of schools, we saw many more children not have access to these feeding schemes. So from a policy framework perspective, how can we better protect children from this malnutrition? You mentioned the end product of which is stunting, especially if parents have lost their jobs. They themselves don't have access to the means to feed their children.
It's a tricky situation, to be honest, because government is trying to do its best to protect its citizens from COVID. But at the same time, we need to realize that those very children, that their nutrition often comes from their schools, that the 2-3 meals per day that they receive, 2 of those at least come from school. So even when schools close from an educational perspective, perhaps we should keep the soup kitchen open or the tuck shop open, at least for the children to receive food. That might be a solution. The second solution is something that we are working on currently quite rigorously, is to ensure that there is local manufacturing of food in township communities. We do that ourselves through a program called agripreneurship, where we train people to become entrepreneurs in the agricultural field. But if people only rely on retailers to get food from, then the moment they lose income, that's the moment they lose food. But if they are able to produce at least subsistence from their own production, and whatever surplus they have they can sell, then at least they have something to fall back up when it comes to food security.
Okay, so that's capacitating a community-based approach, but what about capacitating the local health systems? How can that also be better strengthened?
Look, I think the obvious factor when it comes to COVID is to start vaccinating more effectively. But the second component is to actually educate people about what nutritional food is. A lot of people don't know. And a lot of people don't know what a healthy diet is, and they don't know how, within their budget, which often is very limited, but within their budget, that they can still have nutritional components within their diet. So those are things that we often do with our children. And a good example is a program we call Garden to Kindergarten, where we train youngsters essentially from age 4 as to what it means to grow food. What does it mean to grow food yourself? And what kind of foods do you grow in order to have a healthy, balanced diet? So there's a lot of education that needs to be done, but there are also a lot of practical components to it when it comes to growing food yourself. So it needs to be a holistic approach from a wellness point of view. And part of wellness is healthcare, access to quality healthcare, and part of wellness is access to quality food.
Alef Muhlenberg, thank you so much for your time. He is the CEO of Youth Development Africa Tikkun that operates in underdeveloped communities.